Let's see. Hello there, everybody. Welcome to Real Talk and Real Faith tonight. It's just 9:02 on Wednesday evening, so for those of you that are willing to stay up a little bit later, it's a different venue for us. So thanks for joining me tonight. I've been wanting to do something like this for quite some time. The title of this experience is not as important, but I want you to understand that this is about being able to talk about things in a very real way and in a very hopeful way and a very honest way. I want to start out with some ground rules for you to let you know that any questions that you have, you're welcome to ask. We are able to receive those questions. We're using the Mevo in my house tonight, and Linda's running this on an iPad, so she'll be able to see your questions. I'm not able to see them yet on my computer, but she'll be able to. And so this is a little less interactive than a Facebook Live experience, but that's okay, because I want to get a chance for us to at least start with a couple of things. So if you'll permit me, let me introduce where we're going tonight. Tonight I want to talk about change, and I want to talk about change and the new normal, and if it will last. So I've got a couple of things to represent that tonight. First of all, we have to determine what the new normal is. We hear about COVID-19 all the time, as we should be. It's getting more serious. But we have all changed, haven't we? And so we are in the midst of living through a very challenging and literal change experience. So if you're like me, I probably think way too much during these days when we're not able to get out as much. So tonight is less about causing you to think more and give you some places to go to look and to think about it in a new way. So here's where I want to start. I want to start with what the norm was at one time. So I brought a couple of things with me tonight in regards to that. I'm very fortunate to have this Bible, number one. This is my mom's side of the family Bible from 1877. And then I have this other big honking Bible, which is from 1881. And this is from Linda's dad's side of the family. And I've been fortunate to be given both of these. What the norm was at one time is that every family had a family Bible. Now, not every family had one that was quite this big and humongous, and it has really cool lithographs in it. Sorry, they're in black and white, no color for those of you who need color pictures. But this has been in the family for over 100 years, as is the other one. The norm was that the family Bible was a place of history. It was a place of relationship. It was how you connected. So, no exception in this family Bible from Linda's father's side of the family. They have family history. The births of all the children, the marriages, and on and on and on. Many folks actually wrote in their Bible that information. In my family Bible, from my mother's side, Linda's family was actually more educated earlier on than mine was. And so my family, very agriculture, entrepreneurial folks, salt of the earth folks. I have this Bible, but the information that's in this Bible is not really as much about family history, which I have other places, but in it are all of these receipts from an organization that my great-grandfather was in, a receipt from lumber for $4.25 for lumber that he bought in Pekin, Indiana, to build something on either the family farm or in the family business. This is another list of information. This is the Messer family, is what this is. So I present these tonight, Exhibit 1 and 2, if you will, as we talk about what the norm was. The norm was that family systems were everything. You lived in the same community, that family system, as they continued to grow and to reproduce. You had your grandparents or great-grandparents. They lived either with you or in the house next door, certainly on the same farm. This continues today in many of our agricultural families. Not all of them, but certainly does. So the norm was this connectedness, and it was this relationship that we have certainly gotten away from in our culture until this COVID-19. Now, I want to also put out a very strong, not disclaimer, but this is real talk, real faith. I in no way, shape, or form believe in any way, shape, or form that God is causing this virus for any particular purpose. Let me say that again. I in no way, shape, or form believe that God is causing this virus. It's important that you hear me say that because there are plenty that you will hear from that do believe that. And maybe some of you watching believe that. We try and look for an explanation about things that we can't explain. We try and understand why things are happening. And in something that is global and something that we do not have the explanation of just exactly how it started. We have theories, we have conspiracy theories, we have ideas, we have some crazy ones from aliens to the government inducing, so on and so forth. But I want to clearly state that I don't believe in any way, shape, or form that God is the cause of this. But I want to talk about our new norm with a reflection back to what the norm was, which was community. And my question for us tonight is simply this. Will what is becoming the new norm stay that way? So change is the first word, but for consistent change, for change to stay and become the new norm, that is what we call transformation. So the question I'm kind of musing with and posing to you tonight is just that. Will we be transformed? Will we change enough through this that we will have a new norm? And my first hand is who I am. I don't have an audience of Newburgh United Methodist Church and love what I do. So I'm coming at this from the perspective tonight, certainly as a man of faith, a person of faith. I'm coming at this tonight as a vocation, as a person that cares for others. I'm also coming at this as a father, as a husband, and trying to discover what that new norm is. So I showed you a couple of the family Bibles that are over 100 years old and the connection to family and how the norm is that community. We've gotten away from that because we're much more transient these days. We can travel all over. My own family live across the country. I have my closest brother is up in the Indianapolis area in Zionsville. I have a sister in New Hampshire, and I have a sister in Cleveland. And then I have nieces and nephews that are spread out all over the place. So I don't have the benefit of folks right next door, across the street, those experiences, outside of obviously neighbors. But I must admit, neighbors that I do not know. That I've seen out in the street getting the mail, I've said hi to, have talked to, or cutting our respective lawns, or wheeling up our identical trash cans, but neighbors I do not know. So what is the new norm? Well, here's things that have changed for me. There was a time, and I bring Exhibit C, and I'm not going to call them all exhibits all night, I'm just having fun. French roast tonight for my coffee drinkers. United Methodist Church started a long time ago, and the very first Methodist, it was not a United then, it was a Methodist conference, was held in 1789 in this country. A friend of mine, Stan, works at Willard Library, and a bunch of books came in, and he saw this book and wasn't sure what it was, but thought he'd open it. This has become one of my most treasured possessions, and I've only had it a month or two. It is a book of discipline, which is the doctrine of the Methodist Church from 1804. And because the first discipline for the states was not printed until 1790, this is only 20 years after the Methodist Church began. It has an introductory page in here written by John Wesley, and also with Thomas Coke, Francis Asbury, and Richard Watcote were three of the founding folks. When this book was put out, those folks were still alive. John Wesley wasn't, but Asbury and Thomas Coke were alive when this book was put out. The norm at that time, and for ministry, and this has been a very humbling experience, if I began trying to read this. You can see it's fragile. It's certainly not been cared for over the years. It's very fragile. But I've been trying to read through it to kind of reground myself as to who I am as a pastor. Certainly in this current age, but also even more recently with the virus experience. Who am I? So I want to read you. I'm not going to read a lot. I just want to read a couple of things that let you know how things have changed a bit. And it's rather humbling. So in this, remember 1804, this is 5 years before Abraham Lincoln was even born. In this, the whole thing is written kind of with questions and answers so that you can, as a minister, this is a minister's guidebook, you know what to do. And it says, what is the duty of a preacher? It says to preach. Makes sense. To meet the societies, the classes, the general bands, to visit the sick. And then it says to preach, and specifically it says, preach in the morning where he can get hearers. So if there are people willing to hear my preaching, we recommend morning preaching. You ready for this? Morning preaching begins at 5 o'clock in the summer and 6 in the winter, wherever it is practical. They're not talking about evening, they're talking about morning. So the preacher's job at the time was to start right off the bat, rise up early with the sun, start preaching. That was very humbling. For those of you that are part of the church I'm serving, do not look for that to happen soon. That is not my new norm. But here's something that I think we possibly might be reverting back to or thinking about. It simply says this. In regards to the duty of the preachers, it says specifically, how shall a preacher be qualified for his charge, which is the word for his church? How should they qualify a pastor? Here's the answer. By walking closely with God and having his work greatly at heart, and by understanding and loving discipline, ours in particular, so meaning the Methodist ways. It doesn't say my schooling, doesn't say my seminary, education, the years I spent in a church before I was fully ordained. It doesn't talk about that. The papers, the theology, and of course I'm not discounting any of those things, obviously. One of the things I'm very proud of for United Methodism, the level of experience and education that we are to have. But it simply says by walking closely with God and having his work greatly at heart. Part of my new norm during these days of isolation is focusing on my own personal walk with God and my heart for ministry. One of the things that I'm finding is that a big part of my heart for ministry is to be with the people that I am to minister to and serve. Here's the second question, last I'm going to read out of this ancient book here. It says, do we sufficiently watch over each other? The answer, we do not. Should we frequently ask each other, do you walk closely with God? Have you now fellowship with the Father and the Son? And at what hour do you rise? Do you punctually observe the morning and evening hour of retirement? Do I get a good night's sleep? Do you spend the day in the manner which the conference advises? Do you converse seriously, usefully, and closely? I hope that I will begin to. As we talk about the new norm, I ask you this question, what has it been for you? Some of you may be responding now, and as I said, I'm not able to see those. I will try something else here as I am talking with you. I'm going to give it a shot, see if I can pull it up in a different place. But what has become the new norm for you? Or are you still adjusting? You may be like I was last week, floundering. What's my schedule? What's next? What am I to be doing? All those kinds of things. Let's try this. And in so doing, I had no schedule. I wasn't sure where I was, what was going on. There it is. I found it so I can see the responses. Thank you for bearing with me, folks. I'm just now pulling it up so I can see what's going on over here on the chat to see if I'm talking to anyone else out there. It's coming up right now. Here we go. Thank you. Hey, Hoffa, good to see you there.
What's my schedule? What's
Oops.
next?
Let me catch up.
All those kinds of things.
All right.
Let's try this. And
there's a delay, so I'm going to cut that off and just watch over here. Hi, Sarah. Glad you're with us tonight. Thank you for being here. So I'm trying to discern for you where you are in this experience of the new norm, and if you're noticing things. For those of you, I hope some of the youth and young adults are watching tonight. You may have to watch this later, but I want you to think about this. You're not able to be with your friends like you normally are. You can still FaceTime, I get it. You can do the Zoom, you can do all these things, but you're not physically able to do them. You're not able to go to school. You're spending more time with your family in a confined space. And granted, many of your folks are still able to go to work. Many are working from home. We're reverting back to what my old Bible was like, and that is we're reverting back to the reality of community. And I just wonder how it feels for you. How does it feel to be in community? How does it feel for me not to be able to relate to the people that I've that I've taken for granted Sunday to Sunday? That I see on Sunday mornings and I talk to and say, how are you doing? And we have conversations throughout the week. Different people are in and out of the building. But right now, I am really looking for quality relationships. And in ministry, that's what I got in ministry for in the first place, to be with people. Literally. And to talk to people, to talk about God to people, to figure out my own faith experience with people in community. And right now we don't have that in the same way. So tonight, do you feel that we are on a path for change that's going to last? Or are you cynical, like many of us can be? I'm not saying I'm not, and saying, well, when this thing's over, we're going to go right back to the way things were. The grocery stores will be full again. There'll be plenty of toilet paper. By the way, what's up with that? That's for a whole nother subject, but this whole thing. We'll be able to go back to our activities. So here's the question for us. When we've been scheduling stuff in the church prior to this time of isolation, we've been fighting one thing, the calendar. Everybody's doing a whole bunch of stuff. We've always said to parents, Linda and I in our ministry have always said to parents, limit the amount of activities that your children and youth are in, and be mindful that although they may be very involved in music, in art, in theater, in sports, and they may be excelling at that, may even get scholarships for that, we're always going to emphasize the priority of a God relationship that is guaranteed to last. Now people are thinking about that a lot. I hope. Maybe not. I am. So one of the things I suspect is that we're doing some, dare I say, I'm going to refer to it as kingdom thinking. What is the kingdom of God? And is what we're experiencing now quality time, even though we didn't ask for it, quality time with family. Some of us I know are very isolated, you're by yourself. But we're thinking about those relationships we hold dear. Once we are able to be together, will it make a difference? Today, at the church, we were fortunate enough to have a blood drive that one of our members, Max, organized with a group of his friends, and it was just awesome. And a couple came in today that I had not met, and we were sitting, of course, we're social distancing, new word for us these days. We're sitting in our respective chairs and turned around and looked at the couple, and I said, it's so hard not to shake hands. And they said, yes, it is for us too. It's so hard not to be able to take that step. And I realized something about myself. That is a step I really do desire to take. And when I reach out to shake someone's hand, it's becoming even more important. It's never been just obligatory, honestly. On Sunday mornings, when I shake people's hands, I hope it's meaningful, but now I'm missing that. How do we continue long after this ends? And what will that new norm be? And here's the thing. The norm that may be new will be different for you than for me. But for the church that I serve, the Church Universal, I hope there will be a new hunger for community in new ways. Not just to come together, hit worship, go home. But to have a desire to really check in on one another. Like it said in that book from 1804, that discipline. Do we really watch after one another sufficiently? And the answer was no. I've got my snow globe tonight. I'll always have some type of little gimmick with me because I'm a souvenir guy. I'm a thing person. If you go in my office, you'll see all those things. Hey, there's Mark right there. A friend of mine, Mark, who is up in Rylander, Wisconsin. Hello, in the north land up there. They have snow on the ground still. We don't. Matter of fact, it's going to be in the 70s tomorrow, Mark. Sorry about that. He got to travel, so I'm living vicariously through my friend Mark. And he went to Greece, and I said, I want one thing. I want you to buy me a snow globe of the Parthenon. Now, here's what I want you to understand. And this goes into relationship and community. Mark and I have been friends now for well over 30 years. We met in seminary. He hates souvenirs. His idea of a souvenir is just remembering the trip, talking about it, coming home. He's an artist, painting. My idea of a souvenir is this. So I asked him to get me a snow globe from the Parthenon. Not even know if they had such a thing. And I'll be darned if he didn't do it. So this means a lot to me about our friendship. It may seem like a simple little thing. But yes, this belittles the reality of the Parthenon, the Greek mythology, all of those things that goes into it, which I dearly love. But this means a lot about our friendship. So thank you for that, Mark. More people coming on. Thanks. Good to see you tonight. And see you're talking to each other. Good. So here's a couple of things. So we're going to pull out a little bit of the scriptures. And again, this is not designed tonight to be this is not a preaching session. It's not a sermon. This is talking and about faith. And here's where part of this is coming from. I'm reading a new book that Linda gave me. It's called For the Bible Tells Me So, and it's wonderful. It breaks apart all of the old ideas that so many of us grew up with the Bible and what it is and what it isn't. And I believe I love it very much. It stretches me, it pulls me, and it opens my eyes, as I hope it will for all of us. But as you look at the kingdom and the things that Jesus said about the kingdom, he says a ton of stuff. But I'm just going to read a few of them from Matthew, because again, I believe this is part of our new norm, because there's a common theme, I believe, that I see in this. So here's a couple. So bear with me. For those of you that like to follow along and be in your Bibles, I'm in Matthew chapter 13. I'm going to start on verse 31. And I'm going to read a couple there, then I'm going to flip over to another verse, and I'll tell you where that verse is as we go on. Hey, Mike and Michael, great to see you guys. How you doing? I keep looking down here. I can see your responses, they pop up. There we go. Hope things are well in Princeton, and miss you guys. Hope you're staying safe and healthy, all that kind of good stuff. So here's what Jesus says about the kingdom of heaven. He says that the kingdom of heaven is it's like a mustard seed, which a man took and planted in his field. Though it is the smallest of all your seeds, yet when it grows, it is the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and perch in its branches. First of all, for those of you that are literalists, you're going to have a hard time with me, because I'm not. I'm a contextual Bible reader. The other thing, for those of you that really get in detail, so one time I was reading this, and it's probably a sixth grader, because sixth graders know everything, and they said, do you know there's a seed smaller than the mustard seed? Here's my response: I don't care. The point is, Jesus is saying something really small grows really big, and it's the kingdom of heaven. So the kingdom of heaven is something that starts out small, but gets really big. We're in a period right now where we've gone from something really big, all these activities, experiences, our jobs, all those things that we use to define ourselves, and now we're back to something small. What will grow from that? He goes on. He says in verse 33, he told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed into a large amount of flour until it worked all through the dough. Some of the people watching will tell you with great definition that I don't cook. I'm not good at it. I was in 4-H, and I was in a club called the FBI Club, for your information, which stands for Future Bakers Incorporated. And I made a butter cake, and I got a white ribbon. It was a depressing moment. But I learned something about baking because you had to bake stuff from scratch. And yeast, when you buy it at the store, is in small packages. And without the yeast, the dough does not rise. Once again, Jesus is saying something that is small grows into something that is big. We're going to skip over in the same chapter 13 of Matthew, to verse 44. The kingdom of heaven is like, you English folks, it's a simile here. He's making a comparison. It's like treasure hidden in a field. So think about that, treasure hidden in a field. As a kid, I don't know if you did, but it was always fun. We would often take a shoebox, make it into a treasure box, and bury it. And say, you know what, when we're old, we're going to go dig it up. And we dig it up the next day and see if we had gained any interest, I suppose. It's like treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy went and sold all he had and bought that field. So something that was very simple, this treasure, he knew it was there, and it was one part of the field, but he bought the whole thing so he could have that precious part of it that was important. So the new norm for me, what is precious in my life? I have lots of time to think about that, a lot of time. You do too. What's precious in my life? And what am I willing to give everything for in my life? Now, the televangelist would take you right from here to a wonderful camera shot of a perfect scene or a waterfall, and they would say, well, we're talking about Jesus. Well, clearly, we are talking about Jesus, not because clearly this is a parable. They're confusing. But ultimately, for a person like myself of faith, what's most precious is this relation with Jesus. But we often don't understand that until we identify the precious experiences right around us. And it works both ways. For some, their discovery of this God who loves them unconditionally, black, white, yellow, fat, skinny, tall, short, gay, straight, transgender, doesn't matter. When they find out about this God that loves him, her, they unconditionally, then they're able to look at the relationships around them and it becomes precious. For others, they discover what is precious around them and they begin to understand how precious he, she, they are to God. I'm not sure which it is for you. It may not be either one yet. But Jesus is clearly saying that the kingdom of God is like something really precious. And it grows because of our love in that relationship. Finally, and there's a bunch more, but I'm just going to read one more. Again, still in Matthew 13, verse 45 now. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for fine pearls. When he found one of great value, he went away and sold everything he had and bought it. There's a common theme. The common theme of that which is small grows. That's the kingdom of God. And that the kingdom of God is so precious, whether it's a treasure in a field, whether it's that mega pearl that you finally find, that is what it's about. And it makes a difference. I'm wearing a hat tonight. And again, some of you that may not know me, yes, the coffee is caffeinated. Are you kidding me? Mark wants to know if this has caffeine. Absolutely. If I'm going to stay up and enjoy this, I'm going to drink caffeine. None of us have any place to go tomorrow, do we? This is a hat that was not my father's, but I bought because of my father. And he got so ill, he was really never able to wear it. But it says the USS Dayton CL-105. My dad was in World War II on a light cruiser. And when I begin thinking about the new norm, one of the things I'm thankful for, at least at this moment in time, as much as I want my parents to be with me again, they've been in the kingdom, they've died 4 years ago. I'm glad that they are not right now having to go to the grocery store and try and find something because they lived in Florida and we did move them back up here. But I'm thankful they're not going through this period. But then I remember my dad telling me stories when I could pull it out of him of the Depression. And Dad would talk about the Depression. And he would talk about standing on the corner and selling day-old cookies or day-old donuts for a couple of pennies. And he talked about what it was like and where they grew up. And they moved a whole lot, went from place to place to place. But here's what I saw growing up. I didn't really understand how blue-collar my dad was as a kid. But my dad always looked out for his sisters and brother, always. My dad was the eldest boy, the second eldest in the family. He always looked out for them. And my cousins, and we had some of my cousins that were not doing well at all. We learned more about their lives as we became adults. But at the time, they were just my cousins. My dad always looked after family. And we would say at the time, we'd say to a fault, Dad, why do we always have to have everybody to our house for Christmas? We want our own thing. Why do we always have to go over to other family? Why do we? The new norm that I'm discovering is my desire, not just for my family, but for those close to me, to know it, and for me to find new ways and continuing ways to express it on a more consistent basis. Now, some of you friends that are watching, we've known each other a long time, same thing. It's not really a moment of true confession. I hope you've known that I care about you for a long time, but what it comes down to is I hope the new norm is that when we're able to gather again together, that we do. That we really do. And that becomes a priority. And that we deprioritize some of the things in our lives that we're doing. So for you, if there are any youth, no, I'm not going to say if, for any youth, young adults watching tonight, and you're missing school, and of course I wouldn't be upset about that, but your sports activities, what have you, here's my whole point. Some of you kids are so talented. You run circles around me. The things you do, the things you paint, the music you play, the things you create, you run circles around me. I don't want you to stop any of that. But I hope that when we go beyond this, whatever that may be, that you will begin to see as precious at least some of these things. Your family, your God, your friends, and you will evaluate all future decisions based upon that treasure that you hold so dear. And another scripture from one of his parables is where your treasure is, there is your heart also. And so I think that's an important thing to think about. So what is our new norm going to be? I don't know. I got to go to the grocery store at 6 a.m. I share this, I think, at my 8 o'clock coffee that I'm doing on Mondays. But got to go to the grocery store at 6 a.m. because I'm finally 60. I'm over 60. God bless me. And that means I get to go shopping with all the senior citizens. Any senior citizens watching tonight? No offense. But I went in the store at 6:01 and it was packed. And but the thing that I noticed, everyone was nice to each other. People weren't tripping over each other. We'd bump into each other because we're looking for something to take home. And people were, excuse me, I'm so sorry, and helping each other. I hope that's our new norm. I hope that happens in the grocery stores. I hope it happens a lot of places. Now, understand this, will you please? I'm not talking utopia. I don't believe we're going to get back to the Garden of Eden where things were just a utopian experience for Adam and Eve for a short time. I'm not talking about that. But I don't believe that any of us can come out of this experience of global disease and death, challenge, scarcity, fear, and isolation without being changed. And I have the audacity to say that many of us will be transformed. And I know that I am being so. And this is not, one of the things again I want to say about this evening when we get together, this is not about me trying to come up with things to come to that biblical moment. That you've got to figure this stuff out yourselves. I am really in a really cool place of some self-discovery about, again, what's important to me. And you may assume, well, you're a pastor. God's important to you. Sure, God's important to me, but it's not because I'm a pastor. I'm a pastor because God's important to me. We've got Disney Plus. Boy, is that cool. If you like Disney, it's wonderful. Anybody else got Disney Plus out there? My thing is freezing up here. I can't see all the comments. With Disney Plus, there's a movie on the other night. Stargirl is the name of it. And there's this one scene where she corrects her friend who says, winning makes people happy. And she says, it's not winning that makes people happy. It's when people are happy, they win. So it's about contentment, and it's about those pieces. So let me bring this to some kind of a full circle and give you an idea. By the way, I have my candy jar with me tonight. I don't know what kind of candy you guys eat at this time of year. I'm a jelly bean fan, regular jelly beans. Oh, I also like these chocolate birds, they call them. It's malted chocolate covered. If you like these are great. Somebody like these? And then in here, for you guys in Princeton, Mike, Michael, anybody else up there, they sell these at Rural King. And Rural King is not a sponsor, but I just want to mention this. They have the best candy, I think. They have Disney. Thank you, Iris. You've got Disney Plus. Thank you. And this is the cherry flavor. They're kind of sour, but man, they're my favorite. Okay, I digress. If we go all the way back to where I started, let me move my coffee. At one time, this was the norm. The family Bible as a center of family history, a place of faith, a place of learning, a place of legacy, something that was handed down to generation after generation as a way of saying, whether they said it verbally or not, here's our faith. We want it to be yours. Make it so if you discover God for yourself. That's what these say. As a minister, preach 5 in the morning. By the way, the annual salary in 1804 was $80. The interesting thing is that it also says in here that the salary for the pastor's wife was $80. They considered them a team. And then they had a stipend for each of the pastor's children, meaning that everything was devoted to the ministry, the whole family. So we've gone from that to what I'm talking about tonight, and that is, I believe, the new norm for me, and hopefully for others, is beginning to be community. Living together in a community again where we value each other's relationships. For you theological folks out there, Dietrich Bonhoeffer talks about this the best. If you want to read some really cool stuff, Dietrich Bonhoeffer was martyred during the Nazi regime for his faith, and his whole thing is what he calls Christian community and what it means. I did a Bible study on that a little over a year ago, and reflections for that keep popping back as well. This Parthenon is also not just because it's from a friend of mine. It also represents the beginning, so to speak, of civilization when you go back to the Greeks. And they spent a lot of time together in extended relationships as well. I've always thought it pretty cool that in the agricultural world, people live on farms and they raise their crops or animals. Lindy, I hope you're watching tonight, she raises goats. But there is this extended family legacy passing down all the way through, and it makes this powerful experience. It doesn't mean they all get along. It doesn't mean there's not fallouts, but I'm hoping for that. And here's my last example. I got the chance to go to Sierra Leone And there was a school that the church I was a part of at the time had helped to build, and I got to go for the dedication. I didn't build a brick. I didn't give $1. I was the pastor of the church, and I got to go. I was treated like an ambassador, and got to go to this experience. It was wonderful. And thanks, Pubi. I'm glad that you loved being there in Greece. And so when I was there, I saw community in a way I've never seen it before. We're in a village. We were staying in a structure that looks just like a house, but it did not have all the amenities. That had what looked like indoor plumbing, but you had to pour a bucket over yourself for your shower, pour a bucket in the toilet to make it flush, all that stuff. But I still can't even put into words what it was like to be with the people in that village day after day after day. Their desire to hear stories at night, just please tell us stories. Not about America. They want to hear Bible stories. It was hilarious. They wanted to dance when they celebrated. All I could do was disco dancing. It was pretty embarrassing, but they were just glad I was dancing with them. We ate together. They cooked together. Everything was together. I never thought that I'd be a person that would adhere to that. As much of an extrovert as I am, I enjoy my private time as well. But there was something enticing and contagious about that whole thing. And that's what I long for. And that's what I'm discovering. So for tonight, I'd like you to contemplate what the new norm, what you think it will be. I'd love to hear from you too. Not just necessarily tonight, but emails or text or anything to hear what you think the new norm may be. Or if you think I'm just full of it and there's not going to be a new norm, that this is just a hiatus, we're all on this confined vacation, and when it's over, we'll go right back to the way we are. We'll go back to our church services, we'll go back to athletic events, we'll have the NCAA next year, the NBA will be back, on and on and on. I'd really like to know. And I guess my final thought would be that, to say this again, as I said, I don't believe God is causing any of this stuff. But the Bible makes it really, really clear, and Jesus makes it really, really clear, that only God can pull out wonderful things from awful things. And I've seen God do this again and again and again. God pulls out wonderful things from awful things. And I believe God will pull wonderful things out of this awful thing. Didn't cause it, didn't want this on us, but will pull wonderful things. So tonight, I wish you wonderful things and a chance for community and to think about what your new norm is. If you're with family tonight and friends, to contemplate those relationships, to text people this week or call them tomorrow and let them know. I'm not saying this as your pastor, as a pastor. I'm just saying this as another human being. The relationships that I have mean more to me now than they ever did. And it's not due to my age. It's due to this experience right now. God's pulling something wonderful out of me. And I didn't think that that was still possible. And God continues to do it. So, tonight, get a good night's sleep if you can. Love your friends and relatives. Care about everybody. And you're welcome to join us next Wednesday, where we'll muse another topic. And Monday mornings for Coffee with Craig. And, of course, worship at 9:45 on Sunday. But for now, thanks for being with me tonight. It's helped me to be with you and to talk about these things, show a few of my family things, but more importantly, just good to be with you. Have a great night, and we'll be turning this off real soon. And until then, I'll have another cup of coffee.